Hello, I'm Jonathan Colopy from Your Why. Welcome to Be Well. I'm fortunate to bring you these conversations to foster a mindful lifestyle of well-being. We have an exciting topic to bring forward today. It is connecting with food, how we can honor the hunger, the fullness, and the pleasure. Really, what we're going to get into is how to have a healthy relationship to food. I'm fortunate to have our guest today, dietitian Anjali Patel. Welcome, Anjali.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Nice to connect with you and have you share some of your expertise. I followed a little bit of the things that you're doing in the community. So this is another opportunity to share more with even a broader audience. I recognize, our topic about having a healthy relationship to food. I find that food holds a great deal of power beyond just nourishing our body. At times, mindlessly, some of us are just kind of noshing and eating, not even aware. Other times we're craving certain things. For me, it's chocolate. Other times we try and distance ourselves from certain things or label our eating habits in a particular way. So if you will, give us some context to that power, so to speak, that food holds over us, or we allow it to.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think food is much more than nourishment to the body. It is very powerful in who we are. Food to me is identity. It's belonging. It's connection. It's connection to people. It has a lot to do with our social health. Getting together at a kitchen and cooking is not just about the food itself, but being together. And I want to foster those ideas back into our feeding, and also, the connection to our traditions and our ancestors, and so in that sense, make food, creating a healthier relationship to food and what it does for us. And like you said earlier, it's more than just the nourishment to our bodies. It holds a lot more power than that.
Well, I identify with what you're sharing in the sense of, a lot of our rituals, all the different holidays is about gathering as a family and friends and community, and it's around food. It's around sharing a meal. And so, yes, it is ingrained in our life that we gather for food and share food. I'm aware that there seems to be a number of dietary guidelines that are helpful for us to live by, and being that you're in public health, what might be the best guidelines that we should be aware of and that we can incorporate into our lifestyle?
There are many recommendations that have come out based on data, and I think we have to sort of individualize that. But one of the things that as a population, we can try to increase our vegetables and fruit, and just in general fiber. So fiber also appears in plant-based proteins and whole grains. And so incorporating those into the diet versus restricting other foods is probably one of the best advice that I can give, is adding back those types of foods into the diet versus removing foods or restricting. And that allows to develop that relationship to food.
I know for me, Anjali, I do really well with fruit, and I have a pretty good mix of fish and leaner meats. Vegetables, I have a challenge with, and I've always had a challenge with that. So, any tips for me and others about how to incorporate? I like how you said, just to add in, and
Yeah.
I'm doing my best, but I know there's work ahead of me still.
You know, Technically, you may be even having more vegetables than you think. Um, Technically, anything with a seed is a fruit.
Hmm.
So our bell peppers, our zucchini, our tomatoes, they're all fruit. Even eggplant is a fruit, technically.
Hmm.
So more, but we put them in the vegetable category. So you might be actually having more fruit than vegetables and vegetable, or more fruit than vegetables. But if you're having a rainbow of or of like, of colors, whether it's fruit or vegetables, you're doing okay. One thing that I practice in my own home, and one piece of advice that I can give you is spinach is relatively a neutral vegetable that you can throw into almost anything. So say you're making a soup, or you even have if you have a canned soup, but you don't even have to make the soup. But if you have a box of spinach in your fridge, then it's easy to just sort of grab a handful and throw
Sure.
it in. So you can throw it into your soup. You can put, an extra couple leaves of spinach in your sandwich. It's a relatively neutral vegetable, so you might not taste it, and but it will add a lot more nutrition. You can even put a handful of spinach in a smoothie.
A
So
lot of my friends do that, and I do put a little bit of spinach, or my wife does for me, because she likes to make me a sandwich for lunch, and so I'll get some lettuce and spinach leaves in there. You're right, soup is a great way to kind of, for me, sneak it in there and get it, which is great. I'm aware, that for me, it seems like there's been a lot of maybe misperceptions, misconceptions about food. Um, so help us out. What are some of the most common things that we believe that may not be accurate?
one of the biggest things today, what I've been seeing in social media and the questions that I'm getting in my classes are, what are the labels, good and bad foods, or healthy
Um,
and unhealthy foods. And food doesn't have a moral value. There are no good or bad foods. It's just food. So it's about balance, variety, and moderation when it comes to
mm,
feeding. And that is what we're talking about when we talk about relationship to food, having more control over that, the balance, variety, and moderation, versus the food having control over you.
mm,
And so when we talk about foods, putting those labels on foods is actually creating a dichotomous way of thinking. And when we label them as good or bad or healthy or unhealthy, we're feeling those effects in terms of shame and stigma of eating certain things. And I think that's the biggest misconception about food, is that there are good and bad foods, and there really aren't. It's just a matter of balance and variety.
that's an excellent point, because I know. Well, maybe you can speak to sugar, because again, I like what you're saying in terms of balance and moderation. Red meats and things like that. So sometimes there's fried foods. And I appreciate what you're saying is in balance and moderation, because I do think if we say it's bad but we like it, then we with that labeling we kind of create this relationship, and it's a push pull kind of thing.
We don't want to feel guilty. We want to eat with
Mm,
joy. And don't forget about the social health of food, right? So if you're at a barbecue and you're eating, enjoying red meat, or you're having bacon in the morning with your eggs at brunch with your family, that's social health right there. And that does contribute to your overall health. So it is a push, and it is a balance. It's all,
yeah.
life is a balance. So when you ask about sugar,
Mm,
sugar is something that is, public health wise, it is a nutrient of concern. So we're a little bit high on the sugar, on the added sugars. So what I would say for sugar is look if you're looking at labels, look for the label on the back of the package. There's always an FDA approved label. And there's a line that says added sugar. And I really
mm,
love that the FDA added that line, because it's not about total sugars or natural sugars. We want to minimize or be aware of what you're eating in terms of the added sugars.
mm.
Sugars naturally occur in foods. Fruits and vegetables have naturally occurring sugars. We're not concerned with that. That is not that's not the concern. The concern are the added sugars, and that's all the cane sugar, the honey, the maple syrup, or the brown sugar that's been added into the food. So that's the one that you want to look for, and you want to minimize that. If you want the recommendation, if you're a numbers person, the recommendation is 10% of your total calories come from per day, come from added sugar. So if you're a 2000 calorie diet, that would be about 50 grams of added sugar, or 12 and a half teaspoons of added sugar. But be mindful of the fact that I'm saying added.
Yes.
not
Yeah.
not naturally occurring sugars. We're not overly concerned. So I really like to look at the label to see, what are they adding and how much are they adding.
That's helpful. I know when you and I talked a little bit earlier, you were sharing how our as we go through life, our eating habits change, our relationship to food change. Share a little bit about that, if you would.
So as we age, some of the nutrients of that we want to be aware of, especially with the 55 plus group, or the 50 plus as we age, would be some of those B vitamins. So B12 specifically, and then calcium, vitamin D, fiber, and protein. Those are some of
Mm.
the nutrients that we want to be a little bit more mindful of. In terms of fiber, as we age, we're reducing our overall caloric intake. So you want to be in relation to that. So that one, if you're a numbers person, again, it's about 14 grams per 1,000 calories of, we're way under that. So I'm not concerned that anybody's going to be over that as in population wise. We're way under on the fiber. The other thing that happens when we're aging is our taste buds. We start to lose them around 65.
Mm.
So, using more herbs and spices might be helpful to stimulate your taste buds, and then also your need for thirst, or your recognition that you are thirsty, goes down. So as you age, be mindful of getting that hydration in. And it's not just about drinking water. It could be having more soups or smoothies,
Mm.
or having foods with high water content. Those fruits and vegetables, again, have a lot of water content. So just increasing your water intake any way that you can. And that includes having watery foods.
Very, very good points. I wasn't aware of some of those things that you said. Transition as we get older. That's very helpful guidance that you're offering us there. I want to circle back to joy. I
Mhm.
love that term. So, in relation to food, how can we have greater joy? Which I would think just would foster a wonderful, mindful, vibrant relationship to food.
I think, with cooking together as a family, if you have,
Hmm.
or if you can join I do cooking classes for the San Diego Community College District, and just being together, in the room cooking together. We're talking about food, we're talking about our childhood experiences with food, um and bringing in our cultural differences into the kitchen, and similarities too, and I think that is joyful, and that's what it's about, is to bring that. For me, it's the social aspects of food that brings about joy, and not fearing it. So if you're at a family event, and you eat, a lot of the family events and holidays are have sweets
Mm.
in across all cultures. Um, and being mindful of the fact that that sweet, yes, we can think about it in terms of like the sugar content, but let's think about it in terms of how it brings you closer to your ancestors and your culture and your connections to your family, and how that can bring joy. And
Mm.
joy can also lead to positive health outcomes. So it's just kind of tweaking the mindset a little bit, um,
Yeah.
in terms of, like, it's not just about the nutrition of the food. It is a lot about the nutrition, but it's also about how that joy can also lead to positive health outcomes,
Yeah.
and that we don't measure. And so we don't talk about them as much in those terms. And that's what I'm trying to do.
That's a beautiful example, because I just think about as that connection and sharing the creation of a meal and sharing the eating of a meal together, you are more in the moment, you're more present, you might even taste the food in a different way. And so that really is a beautiful example. And I think about at the Y, a lot of what we do is foster connection and provide opportunities for community to come together. So a wonderful example, Anjali. Anything in closing, if I was to challenge you, it would be, what would be one thing that you would say that we could incorporate today and move forward with a healthier relationship to food?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Yes, it is, but you're up for it. I know you are.
One thing that I would say is, I would say, you know, don't fixate so much on nutrition. I know there's a lot of information out there,
Mm,
but one of the things that you can do most for your relationship to food is not fixate so much on nutrition,
mm,
and to, if you're in a place of restriction, to sort of slowly offer yourself that food, it little by little, the ones that maybe you've let go over the years. But I think that if we bring the joy of food back into
mm,
our everyday lives, then the nutrition will follow.
mm,
Um, and so, be mindful of the labels that we put on food too.
mm.
Good, bad, clean, junk. Those are, though, bringing about awareness of the fact that those do not exist, and we're putting that on food,
Mm.
can help with the relationship to food.
That's a surprising recommendation from a dietitian, and I'm teasing you a little bit because I really appreciate it. It's if we're focused on the joy of the experience around and with food, there's less judgment that we give to ourselves about our eating, and so
There's
it's not as charged.
there's less judgment, there's less stigma, there's less guilt.
Yeah.
I think that we live in a time right now. We have a lot of information available to us at our fingertips here, and guilt and stress
Mm,
of eating. I haven't done the research anecdotally. The stress and the guilt and the stigma and the shame of eating,
mm,
I believe, is worse than the foods itself.
mm.
It can be worse. It can have very detrimental effects on your health versus the food itself. And
Yeah.
so we have to think, a lot of it's individual, and a balance, and a balance, and in your own life, and only you know your own life. So,
Mm.
you cannot look at someone or on social media and say, I'm going to eat like them, and then my life will, I'm going to be ever. It's all very individual. So having more of that awareness is what I would love, to help people develop.
Perfect. 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 Sounds like that's a book wanting to happen that you're going to bring forward. Joyful eating.
Joyful eating.
Anjali, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and guidance, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the work you do at the YMCA. Great
Thank,
community.
thank you. My pleasure. And to those that have joined us today, until we gather again, please be well. Thank you.